Hello world, it's your sister here, the real African American. Today I just want to share some thoughts on a controversial, topic in the African American community. Um, Most times, first I just want to say, all black people, we are one. It does not matter what part of the continent or the world that you're from. We are all one person. We are one people. We are family. We're black. We may have many different shades of black, but we are still one person. We are still one people. I've heard often from African Americans here in the United States that say, I'm not African, I'm an American, period, or I'm a black American. Or, some will say, because I never experienced Africa, I never grew up on that continent, I'm not an African American. I remember a conversation that I had a couple of weeks back, and we were debating about what my true identity is. I said I'm the real African American. Some people disagreed with me and said because you grew up in the on the African continent as a child and you became an adult before you came in the United States, you are the real African. You're not an African American, because both your parents are African and you grew up there and you have that culture, so you're not an African American. But I consider myself the real African American because I lived in Africa. I was born and raised an African, and then I spent close to 30 years in the United States. So technically, I'm also part of this culture here that I had to be in order to survive. So I consider myself, I understand some things. I'm not gonna say I'm an expert in the journey or the things that the African Americans have had to suffer here in America, but at least I know some things. Okay, I've lived with African Americans. I've lived in the society. I have some knowledge. I have first-hand experience about living here as a black person in America. Excuse me. So, moving forward, I just want to say, we are all the same. There's no need for us to discriminate against one another. Some African Americans, they feel like, oh, Africans are sellout. I'm not saying all African Americans have that, ideology or mindset, but a lot of African Americans think that Africans, we sold them out into slavery. We sold our people out, and that's why they were captured and brought, to the United States as slaves. We understand some of the history, but we are a generation, those of us that are living now, many of us have moved away from that generation who were first-hand slaves. Some people today, your grandparents were slaves, your great parents were slaves here in America or other part of the of the West, and you have that experience. I didn't have that experience, and I do want to apologize on behalf of the Africans. Even though we were not born at that time, we were not in existence at that time. Sometimes, people want to paint you, in that same light. They want to paint you as, a descendant of people who sold their own people out. The black people are the only race, in America that I know that are against each other. They envious of each other. They fight against each other. They try to pull each other down. They're not supportive of one another, especially when they see you as being from a different country and you speak with an accent. They can judge you. You understand? But from my experience, we all eat the same kind of food, but processed in a different kind of way. When I see African Americans, the meals that they eat, and I see Caribbean Americans, the food that they eat, and I see Africans who are from Africa, the food that they eat, it's all similar. It's from the same things, but they just process differently. So we should not try to segregate ourselves or discriminate against one another and think, oh, one person or one culture is better than the other. No. And for Africans, some of them think they are also better than African Americans because they feel like the African Americans do not have a culture or do not have an identity. You understand? They don't know where they're from. They've never been to Africa. They just here in America or other Western countries, and that's their experience, and they don't know any better. That's false. We should not judge people based on where we are coming from. We should not project on other people, our own beliefs because we feel like our beliefs is better than other people's beliefs. You understand? But it's my reason for this video today. What I want people to take away from this video today is we are all the same. We are from the same source. Black African, Black American, Africans, Caribbean people, wherever you are on the face, Canadian, Caribbean, Canadian, I don't know how to say it anymore. Even Australians, they have black people. Europeans have black people. We are all the same. And we should not discriminate against one another. We should try to build a united front. That is the only way we can win. We should try to build a united front. If you look critically into cultures and races today, you will see that the black folks, we black people, we are not, we are at the lowest. You understand? We are at the lowest because we're not developing each other. We are not, supporting one another. We are segregating one another. We are discriminating. Oh, I'm a Nigerian. Oh, I'm a Cameroonian. Oh, I'm a Jamaican. Oh, I'm from the islands. Oh, I'm from here. I'm Kenya. I'm this, I'm that. You understand? We should now learn to come together and build together. African Americans, I just want to give you a challenge out there. Africa belongs to you. If you have the resources, please invest in Africa. If you have the ability, to improve practices, systems on the continent of Africa, please, I'm just pleading on behalf of so many millions or billions of Africans out there that need help. We need to transform the continent of Africa. We need to change these narratives of people escaping African nations, trying to come to the West to impact on many systems. If Africa is doing well and the leadership there are reasonable and they are righteous and doing what they're supposed to do, people would not come here. I remember when I was growing up as a young woman, Nigerians used to come here and go to school, get an education, or go to England or Canada, get an education, and they come back into the system to give back. But today, people don't want to return home because there's lack of security. There's so many things that are going on in that environment that is threatening to a lot of lives, especially if you've lived on this continent, like you've left that African continent, if you've lived in the West and you have experienced how systems are built and how things are functional. It scares you to go back there and put your life in danger. I'm not saying everywhere is dangerous in Africa, but I'm just saying it's easy for things to happen to you that can be prevented here in the West because they already have systems built in place. And I know we have a lot of intelligent black people all over the world that can help rebuild Africa. So my plea is to everybody, let's please consider investing back into that continent. Let's start thinking about, living back, building schools, building institutions, building systems that work, raising families, that have values, that have morals, the people that are united, a united front, so that we can destroy the ills of the society that are ravaging, the African continent right now. So that's all I have for you guys on today. If you have any questions for me, you can leave it on this video at the comment section and I'll get back to you. Love you guys. Toodles. Bye-bye now.